Today is Wednesday, March 26th, 2025. We do have a quorum present, so I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the Chittenden Solid Waste District.
Yeah.
Board packet has been sent out, and I trust that everybody's had a chance to receive it and look at it. First item on the agenda is the agenda itself. Are there any requests for additions or changes to the agenda? Alan, did you? No, I think not. Hearing none, then we will follow the agenda as presented in the board packet. Second item on the agenda is the public comment period. Are there any members of the public present, either in person, via phone, or via Zoom, who would like to address the Board of Commissioners on any issues that are not part of tonight's agenda? There are no members of the public present in the meeting room, and I do not see any on Zoom, or I'm not hearing from anybody on Zoom nor on the phone. We will then close the public comment period and move on to item number 3, which is the consent agenda, which consists of the minutes of the February 26, 2025 Board of Commissioners meeting, program update memo, executive director update, and the standard finance report that's always part of the our meeting packet. Any requests to remove an item from the consent agenda for further discussion?
Well, the executive director update did not make it into the packet.
Okay, thank you. So we'll note that the executive director update is not part of the consent agenda. Any requests to remove any other items from the consent agenda? Hearing no requests, the consent agenda minus the executive director update will be accepted as presented in the board packet. We're already on to item number 4, which is marketing agency authorizing the contract, but we also have in our packet a PowerPoint presentation, so I will turn this over to staff, Sarah and staff, to walk us through that.
Yes, thank you very much. So we are presenting the board with something new. We have not done this, I think, ever, probably in our history, or if we did, it was a very, very long time ago. We are looking to contract with a marketing and advertising firm for a slew of services. And this is in part in response to our marketing specialist who resigned earlier in this year. And they were primarily responsible for doing in-house just about all of the graphic design needs. They will work on signage for us, they did our annual report for us, and a number of other things as well. And as we do whenever anyone resigns or is promoted, we take a look at that job and we say, is this something that needs to be filled again? Or is there an opportunity to do something different, try something new? And because we know that we're coming up in the next couple of years with some significant needs for the MRF in particular, we said, well, this may be an opportunity to start to work with an agency and to develop a relationship with an agency to, in preparation for that, but also to kind of do a test run, test the waters of what other services that they may be able to provide that we're either too busy to do here in-house, or we just haven't been able to get to, or that could augment what we're doing. And so we said, let's take this opportunity to try this out for a year. So this is what you have here. It's the memo describing who our recommended vendor is. And I'm going to turn this over to Elise Serta. Elise is our marketing communications manager, and she will walk you through some of the creative, particularly that the selected vendor has done that really impressed us, and some of the rationale, additional rationale, and how we intend to work with this firm.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity to talk with everybody. So we did go out for RFP in January of this year. We were very lucky. We had 17 respondents to the RFP. And ultimately, we did whittle that down to 5 finalists, which were all very well qualified. And it was a difficult choice in the sense that everyone was certainly very talented and had the capabilities of what we were looking for. When we did narrow it down to the 5, we did bring them in for presentations. We had 3 that were local, and we had 2 that were actually out of state, so we did perform those presentations online. All performed very well. But at the end of the day, when we had a formal process for scoring the experience of the firm, experience of their staff, the quality of their response, and also we did look at a blended fee rate based on what they provided. All of the finalists did provide a blended rate that's provided in your memo, so you can actually see what the rates came in at. Though we didn't decide everything on the lowest rate. We did take rate into consideration, and the agency that we did go with was pretty competitive, and you can see that in the spread. We did ultimately go with their staff in-house, which means a lot of agencies nowadays contract out for what they may not have on staff. So you're working with third-party contractors, whatever expense that may entail. But Place had a pretty extensive bench, as we call it, that would sort of cover the gamut of what we have. And something that Sarah alluded to is our range of services that we need here go from big picture strategy to all the way down to, I call them up and ask them for a sign for the Christmas trees that we're taking in this year. So we needed someone who was going to be that nimble. Also, there was a benefit of someone being local because we can have those in-person meetings, which we all know via COVID. There's a lot of room for misunderstanding, and it's great to be able to sit down and also not incur the cost of an agency having to fly in. So Place, and I will show you a couple of slides of this work, but they're really well known for working with Vermont governmental agencies. So they had government and state agency work, Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation. We all know them very well here at CSWD. Efficiency Vermont, Let's Grow Kids, to name a few. Also, they work with big brands, and they're very Vermont focused, which is good. They know our environment. Their staff mostly lives in Chittenden County, so they're also very familiar with what we do here. But Darn Tough, Vermont Coffee Company, Dakin Farm, all very tried and true Vermont brands. So I'm going to show you, just a second, I'm of that age. I'm going to switch over to show you some basic. Let's see, how many do this differently? Down there it goes. Thank you. Okay, let me know if anyone cannot see that. It's out of the way a little bit. So this brand must be very familiar for a lot of you. I'm certainly a fan of their socks. But Darn Tough, they've been with them from the beginning, and they've done everything for them from print campaigns to their website, to advertising campaigns, and also trade show work. So we really liked that they took a good look at what Darn Tough needed and also the environment that they were coming from, and have been consistent. This has been a long-standing relationship, so that was actually a good sign for a lot of agencies, is that they're sticking with their brands. The next one, this might also be familiar, Let's Grow Kids. Let's Grow Kids, of course, is looking out for childcare in the state. Let's Grow Kids, just the brand, the logo itself was not created by Place. I like to say that because it's another artist that gets the credit. But they've also worked with them very extensively. I actually, before I worked at CSWD, worked on a video with them and did some voiceover. They were very easy to work with and very helpful in steering the brand. So you can see they've also done a lot of print materials, which we don't have a huge amount of print right now, but the ones that we do are very highly used within the organization and with the general public. So we wanted somebody who could excel at print. And let's see, where did the third one go? Oops, sorry about that. think that may be all that they gave me. And I closed it.
That was all that was in the packet.
That was all that was in the packet, okay. So we really liked their creative, we were very impressed. We did have the second place agency had really strong creative too, but when we looked at the whole package of what they were offering, we were really impressed. So I really like the idea of working with this agency. I'm a one-person shop right now. So it's me doing the web work and the marketing work at this point. So I think there's also just a huge opportunity to take another look at the district. How do we get to people? How do we really change their minds and change their behaviors? I think also looking at our facilities, really, who's going to help us drive people to our facilities to help raise revenue? I think that's a different beast for the district, and I think there's a lot of opportunity there. So Place came in for us, number one, $140 hour rate is great. Just also to clarify, because I know Sarah wanted to make sure we understood, this is a one-year contract, not to exceed $95,000. With 2 one-year options to renew. So if we get to the end of this year and we decide that this isn't the agency for us, we can reevaluate at that time and see, do we bring people back in-house or do we go for another RFP to look for another agency? Or if we think it's going well, we can re-up for another one-year option, and then we would have another one on the docket if we needed to after that. So that's what we're looking for, is permission for Sarah to sign off on this contract. I'm happy to answer any questions, or Jen or Sarah. This was, I forgot to mention, the deciding team was Sarah, Jen Holiday, myself, and Beth Parent. So we were the team that actually selected.
I just want to also mention the other thing that really excited us about Place. There was kind of 2 areas. One is their approach to creating a marketing strategy with us, and the internal stakeholder engagement to do that. And we as an organization really could use a lot of, coming together. We're a small organization, but we have ops, we have marketing, communications. And, this was about bringing us all together and really getting on the same page, which will be really helpful. So that their process seemed very well thought out for that. And the other thing they showed us was a rebranding for an agency that was just amazing. It really, I have no other word for it. It was just really profoundly great. And it was for, it used to be the Voc Rehab
Yes.
agency, and they rebranded it, renamed it. It's a state agency, which is doesn't usually go out on the limb like this, but they did, and the staff were just thrilled with the rebranding. And it's a state agency that's throughout other states as well. They have the same organization, and they're looking at rebranding similar to how they rebranded here. We didn't go out looking for rebranding, but as we looked at this more and talked to these different agencies, we got to really thinking CSWD actually might want to look at rebranding in a year or two, because we're constantly getting confused with other organizations, and it's not very clear always to the public who we are and what we do. So that was kind of a bonus.
Definitely. And again, they have multiple rebrands under their belt, but I think any time in a rebrand, potentially timed with a MRF opening, gives us an opportunity to grab people's attention with something new, but also teach them something new, which certainly with the new MRF opening, if there are changes to materials that we take or procedures or how people handle their recycling, this might be a great way to roll it out and get that attention that we would need.
Great, thanks for the presentation. I don't know,
Oh,
did you
sure.
have anything else to add? Nope, at this point. Katie, your hand is up.
Hi, yeah. So I think this is great. I love all of this information. I think it's a fantastic idea. I just have a question. If this is a good look for the district because we have a $4.2 million shortfall for the MRF project, and we're going to ask for a solid waste management fee increase of $10. So, I mean, this is, $95,000 is, maybe not comparatively a huge sum of money, but we're, asking haulers to pay $10 more in the solid waste management fee to cover our shortfall. And now we're gonna kind of go out on this project, which maybe is not in priority. I'm just asking if that's something that was considered.
Katie, thank you for that comment, and it is a good perspective to bring up. To maybe add a little more clarification, so the $95,000 represents the fully loaded all-in rate of the person who resigned, essentially. So if we did not have this additional assistance with an agency, we would need likely to hire someone for the graphic design work. We would not be getting the additional support. So we would still, for our everyday regular items that we need to do, would need to seek outside assistance for anything different in creative, any new designs on collateral or brochures. If we wanted to redesign the sign, we would need to go out for creative assistance. So there would be costs on top of the employee and their fully loaded rate to accomplish what we believe it will be able to accomplish with this agency. So it's not above and beyond what we would have been spending had we kept everything in-house. It's actually the same, and I think represents a little bit of a savings. I haven't quantified that, but the way that we approach how we need to do this work is actually a kind of better deal. And not that the employee wasn't great, they were fantastic, but they didn't offer the scope of services that this contract offers. And we still need that work. So this is not work that we can't not do. We still need to have signs. We still need to have brochures. We still need to be developing postcards like the one we're sending out to Burlington next week. That was done in-house, but we really could use additional services for that. So in order to help us accomplish what is required for our outreach team through the SWIP and through our other goals, this is a level of support that we feel is in line with what we not only have gotten in-house, but what additional we would need. So at least I don't know if you have a kind of a scope as far as over the fully loaded rate that we might be spending for the additional work?
Well,
or-
this is what we want to keep in mind too. This is a contract up to 95,000,
Correct.
right? So this will be based, Katie, on statement of works. So we're not contracting and saying, hey, out the door, Place is going to walk out with $95,000 at the end of this year. What we're saying is we have up to that budgeted for the agency. But what we'll be doing is basically taking a look at the work that we need to be done, and then we'll be getting statement of works at that hourly rate, which is also, I will add, a very discounted rate from Places originally because we're a nonprofit. So we were very happy when they offered that up to us. But yeah, part of what it is so I will talk a little bit about me because basically I'm what you have right now, which I'm amazing, by the way. But I am a marketer by trade, but I'm also working on the web. So I do all the web work myself. I'm in the back end of it. I'm doing all that work. I'm working with all the departments to get their needs met from a marketing standpoint, and then also trying to look at what the organization is as a whole and that big picture of how do we move forward. And I'll just say for myself, even with the support that I had from a marketing creative specialist, they were very focused on execution of creative. So they helped in the web world that we worked in. But yes, some of the things that are bigger in thinking, and I'll say this, we're trying to become more data-driven in how we make our decision-making, and that also includes marketing and what we do. And this agency comes jam-packed with that information. So I think they'll also help us be more efficient in how we spend our money on creative and advertising. They'll also bring a really deep knowledge of the community. Jen and the outreach group and Sarah have done a lot of great work with surveying and finding that data so we can start making those decisions. And I would say the same for marketing. We should be doing a majority of our decision-making based on who do we want to get to and what's the best way to do that. And these agencies come with that knowledge. So to Sarah's point, you know, you can hire myself and another individual, but we will still have to go out and find that information and potentially pay for that expertise.
Thank you for that explanation. That was really good. I appreciate it.
Thanks for the question, Katie.
Doing the math,
Mhm.
$95,000 seems to translate to about 680 hours, which is around 17 weeks, full-time weeks. Have you budgeted the likely needs to see whether that, is that, are you likely to come in within that number to do the work that you want to do?
Well, one of the cool things about Place was, and this was unique to Place, I think we maybe saw this in one or two other agencies, is they actually took that 95,000 and based on the items that we request, they broke them out for the hours that they thought they would be able to spend, that they would require, the dollar amounts associated with that, and they were able to cover the entire gamut of what we had asked for. So yes, I believe they're gonna be able to fit that into the hourly payout, but interesting enough, this plan was created before we got the break in the hourly rate. So there's another opportunity to go back now and say, based on, we wanna start with a marketing and communication strategy because that will basically cascade and inform everything else we need to do. There's also, as Jen is always looking out for our team, which is, we have things coming up all the time that we can't predict. So we wanted the agency to be able to sort of be nimble enough to work with us on that kind of thing. And the way they've laid out their hours and the hours and the dollar amounts associated, we can be flexible in that way. So at the end of the year, you know, we all would like, or if you ask a marketer, I would like to spend $95,000 with an agency and get what we need and what we would like to do. But we're able to really massage that for what the agency, for what the CSWD needs. So we may come in and say $50,000 is what we end up spending because that's what we actually needed to do this year, or we have the capacity to do. So I was really impressed with their breakout and their plan, because a majority of the other agencies said, well, we'll charge you $150 an hour, and yeah, we'll talk to you about it after you sign us. Place put that up front and said, this is the type of work that you need, here's how many hours we think we need to allocate to it, and gave us a timeline. And that was really important because we need an agency that's going to keep us on track, moving along. We love to talk, we love to think, we love to, think of every single option. This agency was pretty skilled at saying, yeah, that's great, but go this way. This way is gonna work for what your goal is. And I think, that it's hard to put a price on that too. So I'm really confident that one of the things, and it was in the memo, but I'll restate it. I did all the references for these agencies that were in the top 5. Every single reference, we wouldn't expect them to complain about them, but they all said efficiency was a top rating for this agency. Being efficient with the client's time, being efficient with the client's money, and that was something that that was an expertise of them that impressed them every time. And this came from a couple of government agencies. So we're not always known for our efficiencies, but they were keeping them in mind.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a timing question, it's kind of related. So were we to approve this and authorize the contract, when would they start? And essentially, would a portion of this $95,000 contract fall in this fiscal year and a portion fall in the next fiscal year, which of course we have not yet approved?
So we've already started working on the contract, and we're hoping to get that together, because I know Thomas has to take a look at it, next week for review. And then as soon as we sign it, they're ready to hit the ground running. The first process, which is the strategy and communications and marketing, I believe was a 3-month process, and that's when Jen referring to bringing stakeholders in from the organization and things like that. So we would start the work in this fiscal
So
year.
some of this expense would fall in this fiscal year.
Definitely,
and-
yes,
And the balance flow into next year.
correct.
Thank you. Other questions? We do not yet have a motion on the floor. This is our preliminary examination or interrogation. If there are no other questions, then could we put the motion before the board?
Motion to authorize the executive director to enter into a one-year contract not to exceed $95,000 with 2 one-year options to renew with Place Creative Company of Burlington, Vermont for marketing services as described in RFP number 2025-0106.
So move, South Burlington.
Second, Heinsberg.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to authorize the executive director to enter into a contract with Place Creative. Any other questions or discussion? I think then we're ready for the motion to vote on the motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much for your work. We're looking forward to seeing the fruits of their labor as well as yours.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Elise. We're now ready to move on to item number 5 on the agenda, which is a discussion, an overview, and perhaps an in-depth examination of the solid waste management fee. The executive director did send out a memo in a separate email, which I trust all the commissioners have received. We are not anticipating any action to come out of this discussion tonight. Just wanted to make that clear, but it's really important discussion that we're going to be having tonight. I'm going to turn it over to the executive director to make her presentation, walk us through it. Then I'll give an opportunity for commissioners to ask their questions. I know we have a member of the public or the hauling community in attendance tonight, and I welcome feedback from Mike Casella as well. Perhaps other members of the community would be joining us, and that's an important voice to hear as well as we take this under consideration.
Great, thank you very much. Yes, as Paul mentioned, I did send out a memo yesterday, and I apologize for the lateness of that. But again, there's no action expected tonight. This is discussion, debate, questions, answers, all kinds of fun stuff. So one of the things I want to make sure that, I don't know how to make that band, but hopefully people can see it. This is generally what we're going to kind of go over a little bit here, and then we'll dive into kind of next steps. Just a review for folks who may be newer to the board, what is the solid waste management fee? What do we use it for? Authorizations? How do we change this? Are we the only ones who do this? Who's charged? How do they pay? All of that kind of basic information. Essentially, it is revenue.
And move that.
Yeah, I don't want to disturb
Can't-
things. It's kind of like a funny.
You can't drag it?
It's hard to
Try it.
oh,
There we go.
I don't know what I did, but
Scroll
that
down.
might be helpful. It is our management fee. And so from fiscal '24, this is probably the unaudited revenue, you can see that the solid waste management fee revenue from that fiscal year represented about 24% of our overall revenue. And that varies from year to year depending on a lot of factors, mainly, the user fees or the tip fees and what's the component of that of our budget. But it is ranged, and it generally tends to be not much more than a third. So this last fiscal year would happen to be just below 25%. And it is the fee that is generated per ton on materials sent to the landfill for disposal. Currently, it is $30, and we raised it last year from 27. And it is used to fund district activities. And so there are some areas that the fee fully funds and some that it partially funds. So fully funds those items there: administration, outreach communication, IT, our maintenance department. It partially funds some of our reserves. It partially funds some components of the drop-off center. It almost nearly fully funds the environmental depot. Still partially funds a portion of the organics recycling facility, and it funds our roll-off. Partially funds our roll-off division as well. And we are authorized to charge such a fee in 2 places. And we're authorized in our charter. The first section under powers, which says the language is there, and the charter is in statute, it is law. It was authorized by the General Assembly back in 1987. We created the district as a municipal entity. So one of the powers among many is again to fix, alter, charge, and establish fees for the services and facilities within our area of operation. And the fees shall be equitable and just, and that's important. Further in the charter, excuse me, where it describes management fees, it reiterates the direction elsewhere in state law that says generators of waste shall pay the disposal costs that reflect the real costs to society of waste management and disposal. And I think sometimes we kind of lose that a little bit. We forget maybe to stress that. But there's a reason why not everything is quote free, that we do. We have a responsibility to charge fees that are reasonable and charge those fees to the generators, which we are all generators of waste. The other area that we have some language is in our own local ordinance. So one of the other powers that are in the charter is that we can pass a local ordinance or a local law. And in Article 8, it describes our solid waste management fee. Article 9 describes the payment of fees to the district. So this is where we get a little bit more specific, but I think still not quite specific enough. We're specific in some respects and not in others, so we'll be looking to kind of amend that as well. But it talks about what materials are exempted from the fees very, very explicitly. And then it states, matter-of-factly, the fee is $30 per ton. So it puts the actual number in there. All solid waste management districts, not necessarily all solid waste management entities, but all districts except for Wyndham charge a management fee. Some also charge a per capita fee. We do not charge a per capita fee.
Can you explain what a per capita fee is?
Sure, it is a separate fee per person that is assessed, charged to each member town in that town's district. So, for example, I'll make it up, I don't know, the Rutland charges a per capita fee, but Rutland, if they charge per capita fee, they would have their management fee that's charged at the site of disposal, which might be $20 a ton, and then they send their towns and cities a bill for a per person fee. Might be $1 a ton, could be $2 a ton, and that varies.
Per person or per ton?
Per person.
Per person.
Per person. So whatever the population is in Paulet would get a bill of $1 per person that is living in Paulet. So we don't do that, but several of them do. I think all of the alliances, I believe, charge a per capita fee. So there's solid waste districts, there's solid waste management alliances, then there are independent towns, and they do their own thing.
And I'm sorry to dive, but I think it's important. How is that fee collected?
Through the tax. So basically, it's attached to a person's property tax. And then when those taxes are collected by the town, they then pay the district's bill to them per capita. So it is incorporated into property taxes. And again, we don't do that, but we do have the ability in our charter to do that. So who pays the fee? All generators of solid waste in Chittenden County pay this fee. And it is wrapped up in the charges that the customer pays to either their hauler that they subscribe to, or to CSWD. We also pay this fee. So the cost for managing the waste, again, whether through private subscription, through drop-off, is embedded in the cost for the service provided by the hauler by CSWD. We pay the fee when the material is brought to the transfer station to the landfill. So we also kind of are paying ourselves. It's a little strange, but we do. So hopefully that is more clear than what I've just explained it as. But anyone who's creating trash pays this fee through their fee charged by their hauler. And then the fees are invoiced, and then we receive the corresponding per ton amount from the haulers, from Casella, from Myers, et cetera. So the fee was first established in 1993, and it was set at $17.61, and you can see has been increased 3 times since then. And I would actually look to Paul Stabler maybe for some additional information here, but from my understanding is that increases were in response to something that was known coming up, whether it was known capital expenses or anticipated capital needs, or if we had anticipated extra operational needs, or if there was a kind of an emergency situation. I seem to recall that there was a severe recession or a slump, and we were finding ourselves short, so we needed to increase. Am I on the right
Yes.
track?
Yes,
Okay.
it was never like a scheduled thing, in terms of like we had a policy of increasing it, like every few years or something. It was just when the budget was done and we decided we were maybe gonna have a shortfall, so we would increase.
Okay.
And as you said in your memo, the board for a long time has always had the mentality of trying to keep it stable and steady for as long as possible. So that's the way it's been.
So it tended to be more in reaction to a
Yes.
situation. Okay,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
So, and then what would happen is we would establish the rate, we would go back and we would change the ordinance, because again, the specific number is in the ordinance. We would have to do an ordinance change, which has its own process. And then that would lock that rate into the ordinance, the local law, or until we change it again. And so that would then be incorporated into the budget. And when we budget our fees, that then locks the fees in unless there's an extraordinary circumstance for the next fiscal year. So as opposed to a private entity who has the flexibility to increase or lower fees, prices as they need, we do not do that. We set them once. Our budgeting process, as we all know, now is beginning in September of the year prior to the start. We bring the proposed budget to the board in November. So we are forecasting our next fiscal year's fees 8-9 months in advance. Occasionally that does change. When we go to the Finance Committee in February, we have done more tweaking. It can also change when the full board receives the budget. Generally, once the Finance Committee has seen the budget, that is what goes to the board, which still is then 4 to 5 months ahead of implementation on July 1. So there's quite a long lead time. So in the event that we feel we may need to change pricing, it's not nearly as flexible as, again, as the private sector. And I think that's interesting because we do have, obviously a couple of operations that operate in a retail/hotel wholesale environment. So we are locking in our tip fee, for example, at the MRF. We lock in our tip fee at the ORF. We lock in our pricing for compost products, for paint products, well in advance of what we may necessarily need going further into the fiscal year. It's a little bit of a digression, but I think it's an important fact. So I'm recommending a different approach to where, kind of talking about what Paul was just referring to, instead of the leapfrogging, set it and then jump 5 years, set it, jump 7 years, jump 11 years. Utilize small, regular, annual increases that would keep pace with inflation. And instead of, we don't want to randomize that. We want to tie this to something that is data-driven, as Elise was talking about, being very data-driven, that is an index that is created by the federal agency, U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, tied to the Consumer Price Index. There is a specific garbage and trash consumer price index that is specific to this industry, and that would be the one that I would recommend. The recommended increase would be included in the district's annual budget, again, proposed in November to the board. That would then be further vetted through the Finance Committee in February. And it would be the rolling 12-month average. So we would propose, like we do for the cost of living adjustment, we would propose, here's the last 12 months. We would refine that for February, make note to the Finance Committee if there's any changes in that rolling 12-month. And then again, it locks in. So it locks in at the February rate, even though it will change in July, but we would lock that in at that January rate being presented to the Finance Committee in February. And this would be utilized mainly to fund the capital reserve. So up to now, the capital reserve has mainly been financed through revenue generated, excess revenue generated by the materials recycling facility. And the MRF has obviously utilized that capital funding as well, but has always been supporting all of the other functions, capital needs for all of the other operations in the district. Very rarely have any of the other operations formally contributed. I know prior budgeting iterations had the drop-off centers contributing to capital. However, that was before we put special waste, special recycling truly in the DOC budget. So the special waste program was always subsidized by the solid waste management fee. The environmental depot has never contributed to the capital reserve. It has always been subsidized through the solid waste management fee, approximately 80% of the budget. And that has been by design. The organics recycling facility would budget for a capital contribution, but then would be subsidized for shortfalls through the solid waste management fee. The MRF has been contributing all along the excess revenue. This would likely not be happening going in the future, because when the new MRF is built, the excess revenue that will be generated over and above, and when I say excess revenue, it's above the operational needs of the facility. That excess revenue would be targeted as an operational need to pay down the debt service. And then if there is additional excess revenue, that would go to the capital reserve, but it would not be to the tune of millions of dollars a year. It might be a few $100,000 a year. So there needs to be a mechanism to fund the capital reserve without reliance on the MRF, because we cannot rely on the future MRF to fill that role as it has in the past. This would be a critical mechanism to funding the capital reserve going forward. And again, I feel because this is assessed on all generators of waste, it is a very fair mechanism for everyone in Chittenden County to be supporting infrastructure improvements, ongoing infrastructure improvements for the districts. It is their investment in the facilities that we then provide for the public good. We would though, and we are now, looking at ways for each revenue generating facility, DOC, ORF, likely not the depot, but we'll try, to right-size the pricing, make sure the pricing is also including true capital contributions from the facility, from the revenue being generated by the facility. And this has long been a direction of the board, to have each operation, each revenue generating operation be self-sufficient to the extent possible, and to reduce the reliance on subsidy. So we are, over the course of this year, are working on those fee structures to, again, lead those two operations, specifically the DOC and the ORF, in that direction for a sustainable contribution. Neither will be able to fully fund, ever, I think, the capital needs of the operations. It is open to discussion and debate. However, I don't feel that is likely. The environmental depot also will likely never contribute the capital needed out of its own operations. We are still working with the legislature on the HHW EPR, which will contribute hopefully some revenue to that operation, but there will still be a subsidy needed. My recommendation would be that through the annual board budget process, that the board annually exempt a facility such as the depot from the requirement to contribute to the capital reserve. Paul, you had a question on this?
No,
Okay.
I misunderstood. I jumped ahead of you, so keep
Okay.
going on. Don't want to interrupt
And I just
you.
have the one slide that I think is critically important. And this slide is in the, I don't know if I can move this somewhere else. Can I move this somewhere else? Is in the packet. Oh, it's a little bit off, but not certain. So this is a representation, and I asked John what did I do? There we go. I asked John Dorward and John Belparta to run the numbers for our solid waste management fee for the last 20 years as if the fee had been adjusted according to the consumer price index increases for that time period. And I asked them to run it for the Northeast Urban Class BC Consumer Price Index, which is what we use to generate our cost of living adjustment for employees on an annual basis, and to also utilize the Garbage and Trash Consumer Price Index. And the Garbage and Trash Consumer Price Index is specific to our industry. And so I wanted to see kind of where both were at. And the orange, maybe you can see my cursor here. So this orange line, this is our actual per ton solid waste management fee. So it started at the 1761, and then you can see here's the next increase to 2206. And then we went this way, and there's the 20 up to 27, and then this next one up to 30. So this dashed line is if the solid waste management fee had been adjusting all along to the Northeast Urban B Class CPI, our COLA CPI. So you can see where, when we did the bump to 2206, we met the cost of living, that CPI. And then we were following that dashed line. We were below a little bit. The jump up, we were ahead of that COLA. We were still ahead, and then we crossed in 2021, which should not be a surprise to anyone. That was COVID year, and then we were below again. The Garbage and Trash Index, we've never met it except for once when we jumped up to 27, and then within a year we're falling behind again the industry cost of living. And I wanted to have this analysis done because I was interested to know what that number would be if we had continued with the Garbage and Trash Index, our industry index. And it turned out it was $39.21 or something like that. Very, very close to what I am recommending the increase be. So my recommendation, and I know we just raised it last year, my recommendation is to raise it to 40. And it is a large jump. However, when we look at where we would naturally be had we gone along with the rate of inflation, we are just about meeting inflation where it is. So in this instance, I feel like we are actually now rising to where we should be. And going forward, if we were to utilize again this Garbage and Trash Index, in the rolling 12-month average, we would be looking at that all along. We would know that potential increase for the budget year, the next budget year, and the board could certainly say, and I would expect the board to say, what is your justification for this increase? Where is this money going to go? Show us why you need this, and have a much more transparent justification, and be able to point to, here's where our costs are going up. Here's what the average is saying on the index. This has been generated from a third party. And we can say, yes, our costs have gone up by 5% here, 10% here, 12% here. Clearly, our costs have risen in the past 20 years, most certainly in the past 5 years. Our costs to manage materials have gone up double digits. It's not a surprise to anyone here as well. Because this chart is in the packets, I will stop the sharing here. And I'm happy to further address any additional items that are in the memo. Some of the other items that I would like to point out in the memo is when we're looking at, well, what's the impact, per person? And it's not super easy to pin the impact per household, because not every household brings a material to CSWD, not every household has a subscription. So, and we price things based on gallons and not based on tons. So the translation was a little difficult. So I said, easiest way to look at it, maybe it's applicable, maybe not, is a per pound. So just the straight increase, and that's what you see on that page 5 of the memo, is what is the value per pound of the current solid waste management fee and the increase. Current solid waste management fee per ton, $30, per pound, 1.5 cents, and the math is straightforward to go there. This is the solid waste management fee. It is, so maybe we want to pause here, Paul, or do we want to, I don't know if we want to get further into the MRF bit, maybe.
I would
Pause
split this
here for
apart. I
now,
think
yeah.
you've introduced, it might be a little bit blended, but you've introduced, I don't want to say the conceptual issue,
Yeah.
but the background of the solid waste management fee and your recommendation is to change the methodology for us to make adjustments to the solid waste management fee. You've also identified where the fee goes.
Yes,
And so I think at this point, it's good for us to have that discussion.
yes,
And then we'll further, you've got the realities that we have to talk about
Right.
with the MRF, but I think it would be helpful to keep them separate at this point.
yes, okay.
So with that, I'd ask now for commissioners for their comments, keep it focused on this conceptual issue and not the practical aspects quite yet of a potential increase to address the situation with the MRF. So with that, Ken, your hand is up.
Yes, hi, that's great. Sarah, thank you so much for walking through all that stuff. And I appreciated a couple things, the idea of slow and steady and keeping up. I thought that was a great idea. In that graph that you were just showing, I didn't understand why the garbage index line was so much higher than the green dotted line, I think, that was our waste management fee if it was indexed to follow. Are you suggesting that if we jump to 30, then we'll always be at that garbage index line?
No, thank you for asking the question. So the orange line, if you've got the copy in front of you, Ken, that is the actual per ton dollar. So that's to show the big jumps in 2009, 2013, 2024. It was a smaller jump.
Right.
And it was the dashed line, the gray dashed line is what the dollar amount would have been had that original $17.61 been adjusted each year according to that next year's consumer price index. So without, just like the standard Northeast, whatever the cost of living adjustment for the Northeast was that year, add that on to the solid waste management fee, and then that would generate your new per ton solid waste management fee. Because the garbage and trash index tracks higher, if we were to have adjusted it for that, the fee would have been higher. So the difference between the garbage and trash index and the general consumer index takes in everything. It's all of the costs involved in daily living. Garbage and trash is specific to costs just related for that industry, which could be different from, it's not taking into account housing, but it does take into account diesel fuel, for example. It takes into account the cost for a CDL driver versus, say, the cost for, involved with hiring a cashier at a gas station or something. There are costs, the cost of trash trucks are higher than, say, the cost of maybe a police car. It's costs that are inherent and specific to our industry. The costs involved with managing a landfill, costs involved with managing a MRF. All of those very industry-specific costs mean that the annual costs of managing that business are above and beyond the general aggregated cost across the.
So for example, if a material, it were determined by government that a material was going to be banned from the landfill and had to be handled separately, resulting in increased handling costs, that might not be reflected accurately in the general CPI, but it would be reflected in the trash index.
The cost of doing business. It's specific to the cost of the trash industry doing business as an industry, yes, correct.
Okay, that's terrific. And can I ask one more follow-up, just clarification question that's
Yeah.
about that? I think about that. Can you just again say, like, I thought that the solid waste management fee paid for administration stuff, and now we're switching to capital needs?
So it does
How did
pay,
that work? Yeah.
thank you, good clarification. Yes, so it does pay for those administrative functions.
Mhm.
And then the excess fees, because generally it generates more, it pays to subsidize partially some of the other second set of bullets, right? So it partially subsidizes the GOCs, the ORF, the environmental depot. And then when those subsidies are satisfied, any remainder then flows into capital. So what we would be saying was the above and beyond those budget needs of everything that is currently receiving that support from the fee, that additional would be directed to capital. And for the next couple of years, that additional would be directed to the MRF project.
Thank you.
Alan, your hand is up.
Yeah, a little history lesson. When the district was first formed, there was about 3 years, I think, that we did it per capita cost to the communities that were members of the district.
Yes.
And we had to go to select boards and tell them that they needed to go out and tax for this extra money to be able to pay that per capita cost in their town tax revenues. And since we have not put that burden on the communities, it's been a heck of a lot easier to get budgets passed in the last 20, 25 years. But the other thing I wanted to say was that in 13, when we raised the solid waste management fee, we heard very strongly from both Casella and Myers that they did not like annual increases to that because they had to increase the rates that they were charging their customers, and they would rather have, a sum that was larger, and we would, collect extra money for a few years and then spend it in the last few years of that proposal. And Sarah's graph shows that very, very well, where we were above the line for 6 years, I guess, and then we had some extra money in reserves. And I'll be very interested in the comments that Mike Casella might say with respect to seeing annual increases in the solid waste management fee and how they deal with their customers.
Yeah, and if I could respond to that, it does show that, Alan, for the I'll call it the COLA CPI, the general CPI. It does not show that for the industry-specific one. We did meet that in 2015 and in 2016, you're correct, and then we lagged behind again. And, costs, we all know everyone's costs, including our hauling community's costs, do increase every year. And my guess is, and I know that I've received increases in my trash hauling bill at home, I know I've had those costs passed on to me as a customer, even if other costs, other fees have not increased, again, because cost of fuel goes up, cost of insurance goes up, cost of everything. And so I would also be interested to hear, and I think I know what the answer would be, but how steady were costs kept to customers in that, particularly that 11 years, where we held that $27 a ton steady? I think we might know the answer, but also holding it steady for that amount of time, and I don't think anyone would agree to that any longer. I think we can probably throw the 11 years out the window regardless. It does not adequately allow us to really better plan, I think, for future needs. What I would be proposing too would be to, again, have to really justify the capital uses of these additional funds. And we tend to present a 3-year capital plan to the board. And we would need to be presenting a minimum of a 5-year capital plan. To the extent we could do a 7-year, that would be better, so that there could be a true understanding of where this money and this anticipated revenue would be going to. So everyone could see it, everyone could see the investment. You know, and I have heard at least once a year when I go out and give budget presentations to our member cities and towns, I routinely get a question from either a select board member or a counselor wondering why on earth we don't increase the fee a little bit every year instead of doing large jumps. And I have said it's because, you know, at the board's direction, we want to keep fees stable. We, you know, don't want to take more than we need. And there's puzzlement. It's not really understood. They accept the answer because it is also the truth. But there is some curiosity as to why not just a small fee increase every year. I think particularly attached, tied to an index that we can point to. I think our cities and towns would certainly understand that. We also, in many of our contracts, have an escalator. We have an annual CPI escalator. We have them in our contracts with Casella. So we know each year that the fees that we pay, whether it's a processing fee or the materials management fee, so the fee at the transfer station, is going to go up by the CPI, Northeast Urban BC class, to be determined by January, by December, by June. That's in the contract. We know that it's going up. We don't know the percentage super far ahead, but we know that it's going up. We generally only know with 1 month notice. We would be providing 5 to 6 months notice of what that increase is. So it's already in place in contracts that we have with some of our haulers.
So the issue, again, I just want to be clear, the issue that we're talking about here is essentially the proposal, the recommendation that Sarah is making, that we free up the process of changing the solid waste management fee. And I think it's beneficial for us all to get feedback and reaction.
Yes.
Sarah needs that as well. Just
Yes.
It's really important. And so I encourage commissioners to voice their either concerns or questions about it. So I'm sorry, Paul, go ahead.
I just have a question. I just want to make sure I understand the process of remittance from haulers. So if I understand correctly, the hauler takes a load to either a transfer station or maybe directly to the landfill. The trucks get weighed there and, you know, and then weighed again after they dump. So they know how much they had. So it's the hauler's responsibility then to remit directly to us the solid waste management fee? Is that correct? So like, you know, one of the smaller Authorize, do they remit to us based on, you know, what they tip at a transfer station or all?
I'm hopefully going to turn to John and see if you have further
I'm just
information
trying
about
to
the
understand the
specifics
process
of.
and
Yeah.
is it?
Yeah. Yes, basically they pay us for their tipping fees.
Okay, so,
And some folks will pay on the spot via check or
Oh.
credit card. Most of them have an accounts receivable account
okay,
and will bill them monthly.
okay. And do you find the data flow, the money and the data flow, the communication works well? You don't usually have a problem with that?
No, it works pretty well. It's coming out of the point of sale. We are manually keying a lot of things. Other than the manual input, yeah, the data is there and it works.
And that is for general tipping fees. I think you're asking about the.
I'm asking about the collection
$30
of the solid waste
management.
management fee, the $30. Is it the hauler that remits that to us directly? Or is it, say, whoever's operating the transfer station or the landfill that charges the hauler? and
That's
then
not
they-
our facility.
That's
Yeah,
what I'm
okay.
trying to understand.
Okay, that's not our facility. Yeah. That part, and forgive me, I'm still figuring some stuff out, but that is. So we're getting the money from the facility, whoever
Okay, that's
they
what I was
collect from the
confused.
hauler
From the
and
site,
then they
from the
send.
scale, from the
Yeah,
scale.
that's what I
On the
would have
scale.
thought. That
Whoever
would be
owns
the
the
most
scale.
sensible
Yes.
thing. Casella has other,
That's right.
you know, expenses that they have to
Yep.
collect, of course,
Yep.
and.
Should they
ours
ever
is just
come
a
across
part
one
of
of
it.
our scales,
Okay,
it'll
right.
come through our
So
point of sale.
we have
but
scale
that doesn't
agreements
work.
with Avenue B Myers, and then also the
Okay.
landfill, we also have
Okay.
that agreement with.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was just a little confused, because when you said the
Yeah.
haulers are paying, I was like.
So was I.
I always thought it was from the scale, or
Yeah.
whoever's
It is-
operating the scale, or the.
That's exactly right. And so there's a bit of a timing delay in
Yeah.
getting that info, but we generally get it okay, and it's very manual. There's a lot of ticking and tying to make sure this stuff ties out.
It's on their bill, so when they go across the scale,
Yeah.
they'll see it broken out.
That's what I thought, and you said something else.
That's correct.
My understanding was wrong all this time.
Sorry that I
So
steered it the wrong
It
way.
helps me understand in terms of the logistics of doing it yearly versus, less.
Yep, so
okay.
anytime we have an increase of any of our fees, we communicate those to
Mhm.
the appropriate entities, obviously.
Mhm.
And then the scale operators they just say, when does that take effect? We say X date, and they key in the new number.
Okay, thank you.
For purpose of, go ahead, Rick, and then I'll jump in.
Question with regard to the application of the garbage and trash index. Are you proposing that that be a purely mathematical operation? Put it in the formula, it spits out a new management fee, and that's what we use? Or is that an ingredient that then we can tinker with that if we need to? What is your proposal?
I would start with the straight math. Here it is 1 year, what's the applicable index? And then it's just added on. We would present that to the finance committee, with our justification for the full fee, or a justification from staff to say, no, we think that we could use maybe the secondary, maybe the lower fee, just like the COLA index. And we could have both of those, if we feel that it's not necessary to go with the industry index. It's nice having two options that are generated at the same time, same bureau, that we can compare and contrast against our needs going forward.
Thank you.
I was going to offer an observation just again for the purposes of discussion, perhaps generate some more commissioner feedback. I like to think in terms of analogies. And I think an apt analogy here, at least to my mind, is the cost of a postage stamp. And if you think back in time, for those of us who are old enough, the post office, you would set the price of a stamp and it would be in effect for a very long period of time. And then they'd come back and make a big jump and we would all howl about the increased cost of what it's gonna cost us to put a piece of mail in the mailbox. And ultimately, the post office said, we need to adjust our prices on a much more frequent basis. And then that's in fact what has happened. And I think this is kind of a similar situation that we're shifting. The proposal would be to shift from a more static rate over a long period of time, then lifting it and over a long period of time, to matching it to the reality on the ground. There's a lot of concern that if you increase or change the frequency, that costs can then go up year after year after year, and where's the discipline to make sure that we're keeping a cap on it? And I think you pointed that out, that it's ultimately the responsibility of we commissioners to evaluate and approve in representing our constituencies and our communities, whether or not we would think that any increase is warranted. So I throw that out there as a challenge really to commissioners. Perhaps you could like the way I'm looking at it, and also the challenge of making sure that we weigh in and represent the community's interests in making sure that costs do not just rise inexorably because an index said it would, but that we make sure that the increase is justified. All the while making sure that we're responsibly managing and overseeing the operation of the Chittenden Solid Waste District. So with that, I don't know if anybody has any feedback to shoot me down, please, or a different point of view, or statement of support. Again, I think the feedback for staff and for the rest of the board is important and helpful.
And the change would still need to be an ordinance amendment, right? So we would still need, if we are going to change to a mechanism, using this as a mechanism going forward, we would be coming back with suggested language for the board to consider, and we would ask for approval. And what we would propose would be to, instead of saying this, the one line, the fee is this, it would be possibly, perhaps as of this date, the fee is this, and then the next section, how we would change that going forward. So we are looking at language that other solid waste management districts use, so that we're not necessarily creating a brand new wheel here. We will be looking at what's already in place and in other districts, sister districts, and would bring that language for review and discussion at the next meeting. Should that be direction, so.
Barb, your hand is up, and then Tom.
I think you just answered my question. When we present it, I think that what we need to present is what the other solid waste districts, they're similar to us. What are they doing so that we can say it's apples to apples? I think, every time our town select board goes out and has to buy a truck, they have to explain it in terms of, well, so-and-so did it. So it's important. That's all. But you already were going to do that. Thanks.
Thanks, Barb. Tom?
Okay, my question is, the average family in the district, how many pounds of trash do they put out per week or per year, the average family?
So I definitely struggled with coming up with that number. We have an older 2022
Yeah, so
number.
an individual averages 1,300 pounds a year,
An individual.
an individual. So, and Chittenden County, or it might be state of Vermont, averages 2.3 individuals per household.
So that's right. So that's the state average. So looking at Chittenden County, it's slightly smaller. The 2024 estimation of persons per household in Chittenden County is 2.28, not much less, but a little bit less. So if you're saying a household is 2/3 persons at 1,300 pounds per person
You're around a ton and a half per household.
per household.
So
That's
if,
what I'm coming up with too, with the numbers you just said.
Yeah.
57 pounds a week per household.
I didn't do by week, I just looked at tonnage
Well, I think
because,
Tom's question was by week.
oh, okay, yeah, I know.
That's the only reason I did that.
I come up with 57 pounds.
So roughly 57 pounds per week. So if you're looking at a ton and a half per household per year, then if we're saying increasing to $40, the average is $50, $60 a year over the course of the year, I guess, will be their impact.
The increase would be $10.
The increase is $10, but if you're talking about the full 40.
Full 40, yeah.
So an
They're
increase from,
currently paying $30.
Correct.
So
Right.
it's $30 times like 1,500, is that the number? I
a
can't
ton and a
remember.
half, 20.
Ton and a half,
Yeah,
yeah.
ton and a half.
My quick math says based on those numbers, $15 a year.
Yeah.
Would be this increase.
Would be the increase.
Yeah. Again, we're still talking more about the conceptual issue here. We're gonna talk a little bit more, I think, about whether or not we agree on how we're gonna change it. We're still gonna talk about potentially increasing it, but
Yeah. This is a question saying what might the impact be?
Right. So further discussion on Sarah's recommendation about changing the language of the ordinance. Alan?
Yeah, I think that there's also industrial and business track that gets put into that 2.7 or something, so it is less, really per household.
Yeah.
We talked about that for years here, how to get down to 2.78 or something, but so I think the amount would be less per household.
And that's true, and that's why I was struggling to kind of put together to land on a number, which is why I just, thanks to, Paul and I talked about, went straight to the pounds, because you're right, and I think households have also a different opportunity to reduce the tons that they themselves produce, right? There are several opportunities to lessen your potential exposure, your impact of the fee. If you are an avid composter and you are not producing that 50 pounds a week and you're producing 15 pounds a week, your exposure is significantly lower. So you're right, the numbers get much harder to slice and dice. We can do more work on that. But I think at the average is probably good enough for the discussion for now.
Lauren, I see your hand is up, and then we'll go to Andrew.
Yeah, I know at the depots, folks are charged, like residential, folks are charged on like a per gallon basis, which makes it easier for them to figure out based on like the size of their trash, or the size of the bags that they buy. Will this affect how folks are charged, kind of at like the consumer level, or like is the structure going to change or just the amount?
Yeah, so very good question. So at the drop-off centers, you said depot, but I think you meant drop-off centers. Yes, we are relating the cost per bag to the gallon, which makes it tricky to do the actual per pound math.
Right.
What we charge per bag is designed to incorporate the costs involved with managing that bag of trash plus recycling plus food scraps from that individual, that household. So we do need to evaluate what additional costs may need to be applied to a drop-off center. In this budget, we had already decided that we needed to change the price for the small bag to better match what you can actually buy off the shelf at the grocery store. So we currently charge $3 for a 13-gallon bag. We're going to increase that to 18 gallons because that kind of matches, and increase that to $4. So that right now is the only increase that we're proposing at the drop-off centers.
And it's not related to an increase in solid waste management.
It is not. It is related to increasing the volume of that small bag. So I think what we would be doing this year, and this is one of many projects I have on John's plate, is to dive into that fee structure at the DOCs and making sure that we are priced according to our costs and wrapping in the capital needs of that facility to make sure that that facility is also contributing to the capital reserve. So for now, I think we'll be proposing, and the Finance Committee will be looking at this again, most likely proposing that the fees stay the same at the drop-off center, but on the bags, but for that one size.
So to restate what I think I heard you say, interpreting, Lauren, your question is, were the solid waste management fee to increase by as much as $10 per ton, the impact on the fee at a drop-off center for a bag that's dropped off, what I'm hearing you say is no change due to the solid waste management fee, a change to the smallest bag because you're more accurately reflecting the cost for that unit.
Right, and we would do what I think haulers do as well, is because when we get charged for the management fee, when we bring our materials in for disposal, we similarly spread that cost out over all of the potential users, the customers of that facility. So we will take the time and evaluate that impact. And again, likely it's pennies or cents, but we would bring that back, I think, in the next year as we do that evaluation.
Does that answer your question, Lauren?
Yeah, definitely. I think my concern is always like how accessible is the fee for someone to forecast themselves. And so like, for example, per ton might not mean a lot for most people because it's not really easy to conceptualize. So just I'm glad that the kind of consumer facing structures are something like per gallon that is easier to understand. I just wanted to make sure that these changes in fees weren't associated with a change in the kind of consumer facing structure of the fee.
Right, and we would, once we do that analysis, I think we do need to what we'll be developing is the mechanism by which we analyze the bag prices and really all of our fees, but that is a critical one. And creating a mechanism by which we can plug in the numbers that, we have and that projecting our needs, and then put that on our website. Show people, here's how we get to this number, so that it's very clear, very transparent, and we would plug in our own solid waste management fee that we also pay, so that people can connect the dots and they can see what it is that they're paying for, and then therefore make some decisions about how to reduce their impact to those fees.
Yeah, exactly. And like businesses as well,
Right.
that kind of thing. So thank you.
Okay, we'll go to Andrew and then Tom. Margie, I guess your hand up was that, excuse me, Andrew, then Margie, then Tom.
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to say I'm kind of liking the idea of the CPI adjusted tip fee. I mean, increasing the tip fee prices never seems like something that's that great to do, but I really like the graph that was shared, and I don't think it's great to really be lagging so far behind and then have these big jumps, Again, it's never great to increase, but it seems like we've got real costs and, the capital reserve fund that needs to be beefed up a little bit. So I am kind of liking the thought that we can tie it to something more official and then have it be just a little where increases that, if I'm understanding correctly, we still will need to approve every time. Yeah, okay. So that makes me feel good too. So I don't know, more discussion to be had, I'm sure, but I am liking the thought of it personally. That's all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Margie and then Tom.
Yeah, no, I think this presentation makes a lot of sense, and I like the idea of CSWD being able to work on kind of a more normal business approach to these costs. It seems to me, unless I'm missing something, that it does beg the question of whether there are other fees that could contribute more to the capital reserve. And if we're doing this every year, I think this may be part of what you were saying, Sarah, that it makes sense to review many of the fees every year to make sure that everything is in line with our real costs, which is what I think we're supposed to be doing. So, I mean, I just think these questions will be begged if this, comes up and is discussed.
Yes, absolutely. And we do analyze, well, I won't say we analyze, we absolutely review our fees every single year as part of the budget process. And many of our costs are known. Again, if we have a contract with a vendor, that's a known cost. So we are able to say, okay, we know that the fee is $50 this year, and we have a CPI escalator of 2.5. We know our fee next year will be X. So we always plug in our real and known costs to our budgets wherever we can, and wherever those are known. Same thing, like Amy will tell you with health insurance. Well, because it's an annual cost, we know 6 months of the real cost. We plug that in, and then we have our estimate for the rest of the year. So we always do that. Every year as part of the budget, we have our rate schedule, and we show last year, this year, projected, and we note where fees are changing and why. And again, most of that is directly related to costs that we are charged by our vendors. So yes, but what I want to implement is a model or a mechanism that we can also put on our website and say, here's what you can expect and here's how we're going to do the math, and just plug that in. And it will have the different factors. It could have the CPI factor. It could have, a fuel surcharge factor that we have to factor that in too. I want to have that process so it's very, very clear, and shouldn't be too many surprises. No one likes surprises when it comes to these kinds of things. We want it to be as known as we can make it, knowing that there are things that are always going to pop up that are unknown, but yes, so that it's clear to the board, it's clear to the public, it's clear.
Tom?
Okay, our household recycles to the max. I'm estimating that the impact of the increase And the solid waste fee on our household would probably be under $5 per year. That's based on 20 pounds a week, which is probably on the high side for our household. We're just two people, but we recycle whatever we can.
Yeah, and I'm sure you compost, and I'm sure, you know, right, you know, so there, and that's where having such a great outreach and education team is, we're really fortunate, because we can, if people have concerns or questions about that, we are ready, willing, and able to help them figure it out. Yes, thank you for doing that quick math, Tom.
Barb?
I don't know if this is totally germane to this discussion, but what I was wondering is, have we ever looked at, and I don't remember in my time there, have we ever looked at each drop-off center being its own cost center? Because I use Williston, and Williston, of course, offers so much more. So I should pay more for going to Williston, where it provides so many services. You know, and maybe the ones that don't provide so many services are less. So that's just a question, but it can be for another time.
It's a great question. I can answer it quickly, and you're right. It is a longer conversation, because Paul and Alan, you may remember that we did used to consider each drop-off center its own cost center, and you're right. It was difficult to do that, because then we could not have the consistent pricing around for all the DOCs. Not only that, but we also the DOCs share services, right? So they share equally the education services, they share the hauling, the roll-off services, they share the maintenance services. So, you know, for a small, like, you know, 2-day-a-week facility like Heinsberg, the cost to run that facility is significantly higher than Williston. And there, over the years, has been calls to justify having a 2-day-a-week facility. It's one of the reasons that we moved Burlington to 5-day-a-week, right? To kind of try to even out and spread out those costs amongst the entire system. So we have definitely looked at that, and we have utilized that. We've gone away from that and instead considered it as a shared system. Certainly is up for discussion and debate if the board would so choose to do so. Paul?
Yeah, I just want to make a couple comments. One, based on what you just said, but in the past, the board was quite concerned about unfairly competing against haulers in terms of, you know, we're getting this solid waste management fee to help us run. So we wanted to try to make it, cost center such that they paid for themselves, which, as you just pointed out, is very difficult. The other thing I just think is important to point out is, you know, we're talking about the cost per household, and really 3/4 of our trash is collected by haulers, and what they are going to do, we can't predict. They have other different cost structures and demands, and so it's, I think, even harder for us to predict what it's going to cost the average homeowner, because again, we don't really have that insight. So anyway.
Great.
Appreciate your comments, Paul. Mike Casella has been on the call here, and he's representing Casella, so I'd give you, Mike, the opportunity, if you wanted to chime in and offer your perspective on this. I think it's important for the board to hear all sides of the issue.
Absolutely.
If you're there, Mike.
Amy, does Mike need promoting to?
He has been. He just
Okay.
needs to unmute.
Okay. He's looking for access.
Can always give them an opportunity later.
Yeah.
Okay.
It looks like we're not able to hear from you, Mike, at this point. So we'll continue our discussion, and if you are able to join in at this meeting, we'll certainly give you the opportunity. Otherwise, you can reach out via Sarah with comments and get that before the board that way.
And there will be another opportunity as well. If this is brought, my intention is to bring language to the board next month. So this is not, I'm not asking for any decisions, no action tonight. So there will certainly be another warned opportunity. But Mike, Amy will continue to kind of work on the access if there's an issue that she can solve behind the scenes, so.
Sarah, can you unmute him by
Oh,
hovering over and there should be 3 dots? He sees, yeah. I don't know if you can.
I can ask him to unmute himself, but I think he had said in the chat that he was unable, he needed access.
That's what I'm doing as well.
Yeah.
It's not allowing me to. He needs to do it.
While you're working on that, just another question, I don't think it was addressed before. Just describe the process for changing the ordinance.
Oh, yes, yep.
Just so that we understand how that works.
Yes, so staff would develop recommended language for the change. We would include that language in a board packet. We would warn the meeting, we would warn the change as an ordinance change pending action, and the action would be to request the board authorize the change. And you would hear it at a regularly warned meeting. And so if the vote is to approve, authorize the change, then Josh, you can pick up from here on what we need to do post that change. So we need to obviously send it to our towns, our member towns. They have to have the language. It needs to be posted for, is it 30 days, Thomas?
Summary would need to be published in a local
Prior.
newspaper prior. And the voters would have, if 5% or more petition for a vote, the matter would go to a vote. Otherwise, it would then become effective 60 days after adoption. So there's that 44-day roughly period by which citizens within the district could petition for a vote on the issue.
So we would publish the language before the meeting. The board would get the language, vote if it's approved, and then it goes back out. Okay.
Great, thank you. So I'd like to move the discussion on then to the second part, which is encapsulated in your, actually it was your first recommendation, but I think we need to hear from you about.
Sarah,
Yes.
Michael did send a message that he's all set now and he's able to speak if you wanted
Okay.
to.
Okay, then
Thanks.
we're here, Michael, if you're.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you for your patience.
Oh, no problem. I had to log off my phone and log back on. I didn't have the permit settings and, all that fun stuff. Getting back to the real world has been nice with the in-person, but unfortunately I'm out of town today. But no, I just wanted to have a conversation, and I think it's been a great discussion. Love listening to the different feedback and points. And I think I understand the need for kind of raising the fees. And I think the district did that like last year, right? And if I look at the CPI data that you presented, it seems like you do follow that trend. I do think that the fees are kind of hidden to the consumer. And, if you're looking at it, why not go for the per capita cost as an increase? Because it's truly a public, process. I think other things to consider would be, I heard some discussion around other revenues. You do have other revenue streams, whether it's the tip fee for recycling, which is the user fee, the DOC fees, other things like that. I'm not a fan of an increase every year. I mean, obviously, we have had to increase our costs. If you do see the trash industry, right, I would say we've had extreme costs because of drivers, mechanics, fuel, all those things. I don't know if I would put the district in the same category as a waste hauler, right? I know you have some of the same struggles that we do. I would say it's more administrative, education, things like that. I think there is some similarities, but not probably to the same extent as a hauler. So that's one concern. And then another big thing, so looking at like a tonnage thing, you also have to look at those business communities as well. So look at, and if you wanted to just use any of the big businesses, Global Foundries or UVM Med, when you're talking about that big of an increase, it will be impactful for their budgets as well, right? So, and I'm just using simple numbers, right? Not anyone's tonnage or anything like that. But if you had a customer that generated 1,000 tons, that could be 10 grand a year in their operating budget, right? That they would then have to come up with and figure out, right? So you're talking real dollars for, manufacturing and other businesses that may be manufacturing in Vermont that may decide to, move to another state just, because of cost, right? So those are things to look at that we're always trying to evaluate with our customers. And I think another point for me would be, if this is due to the added recycling cost for building the new facility too, I mean, we're more than happy to and willing to present and come to the board with a proposal that may kind of work with you on something that may be, less costly, right? And any way to understand that would be good. And I think with all the other fees and increases, right now is not the time to be looking at it unless you really are in dire needs, which I don't know if you really are in dire needs from a facility standpoint and other things, right? I can't tell you where you're at with your business, but I just see the reserves and kind of look at it saying, hey, you're in a good position. I'm not saying you're in a great position, but at the same point, is now the time, right? And some of the fees, I think, too, have been used in past to compete with local haulers. And that's, for me, it's a slippery slope. And, and all the fees that you do charge to these haulers, they do get passed back on to consumers. So I think that's one of the big things is, these fees are passed back through. And I know when we pass fees through, we're very cognizant of, where they are en route, how far out are they? And as we add more and more fees, it just makes it more and more costly to service, rural areas and other areas that are going to be more difficult for us to get to. They're already difficult and challenging, right? Because you don't have the same economics of being able to send a driver, just say 15 minutes to go pick up a residential household, which you do provide a great service because you have the drop-offs and other things like that. But the same thing, those are all costs that we look at. But I don't know if there's any kind of questions that the group has for me. Happy to answer anything.
Well, I just wanted to start up saying I appreciate your list, and you're very concise and very clear. It's been very helpful in understanding your point of view, your position. So thank you very much. Do give other commissioners a chance if you had a specific question. Okay, I'm cognizant of the hour. We still have some more work and discussion to do, so I'm going to ask Sarah then to move on to the second piece, which is really talking about some of the justifications for why she's recommending an increase to the solid waste management fee.
Right, and so, Mike is right, that this is coming here now specifically for this MRF project. And it was not what we want to do as staff. We certainly did not want to be in this position. And it is, as we all know, is through, mostly through, reasons that were not within the district's control. And we are certainly not alone in being in this kind of a position. Projects are struggling all over the country right now. So we've been having regular multiple conversations a week with our architect, our construction firm, and trying to pin down the cost as best as we can. We have today landed on the site location, which means that once we close on the property, we can then send folks in to start doing that geotech work and do some of the test pits, which will then be used to further nail down the costs for the construction of the building. So as I had mentioned last month, and I believe I reiterate here in the memo, what you have are the current still estimated costs. We will be getting those, REARC will be getting the bids back mid-May, early June, and that's when the hard costs will be known. So, but what they've already told me is what you have here. So that is where the current estimated project cost comes down to that 37.4 million, which is a staggering number considering where we were just 4 years ago, 3 years ago. And again, we're looking at the sources of funds. To be clear, I am not suggesting that we go back out and ask the voters for another bond. Part of what will make the MRF affordable when it is commissioned is to not extend any more debt, not to incur any additional debt service. So the current bond, the 22 million, is baked into the operational cost of the new MRF. So that is the same, and luckily that is known. So that is according to the schedule, like every mortgage basically is. We again were fortunate to be receiving a grant from the A&R for 1.5 million. We had a small grant from the recycling partnership, that's what TRP means, for 250,000. We had always intended to put some of our own capital dollars into this project, and that's the part that has been creeping up. And so when we're looking at the current shortfall based on the current estimate, we are looking at needing to put in, from the district's perspective, nearly $14 million. We were anticipating 5, could float 9. We're looking at 13.7, nearly 14. I'm hoping we'll get down closer to 13. So when we're looking at our reserve funds and what is projected to be the ending amount in fiscal 26, which is what we showed to the finance committee and will be bringing to the board. Again, the budget is done, but for this, right? So so these numbers are what would be presented to the board. Anticipated to be ending fiscal 26 with just over 9 million, operating of just over 1 million, solid waste management fee just 1.3. So our total unrestricted or unassigned, uncommitted dollars in the reserve funds at 11.3. When we say unrestricted, so some of our reserve funds can only be used for certain programs, like biosolids can only be used for biosolids. Closed landfill can only be used for closed landfill. We will not tap into those reserves. The ones that are available are here. So when I say in the chart on page 3, max drawdown, that is the most that I would want us to tap into those reserves, those 3 above. When I looked at the 1 month need according to the budget in fiscal 26, that's what's in that third column. 750 is a general guess, and that's for emergency only. 1 month of operating is 815, 1 month of solid waste management fee, so admin, et cetera, 304. So that looks at 9.5, and that leads me to the shortfall of 4.1. I want to stop and ask if that is clear, or if there are questions there, because I will.
I have one question
Okay.
about your projected costs of 37 million. Where do the tariffs, are they included in this, or is that, I know you don't have final numbers or
Can't predict it.
No, they are not. So that is the general delay cost of 800,000, general escalation of 1.1, and the need to extend the building from the original 62,000 square feet out for mechanical room, for office space. That is $1 million. That's where we are already looking to value engineer. So in the design that we are approving this week, we are shifting some of that the addition, but we have to put an office somewhere, so we're looking to utilize space over the bill storage area for the office space, and we're taxing the estimator with REARC to really be as frugal as possible. And he's always going to estimate on the high side so that we don't have surprises. We're going to push for as accurate and real, close to the bone estimates so we can give you the best number as possible. The other piece to this is we will also work with REARC, with the construction project manager, on when is the absolute last date that we can order the steel, and hope, just you don't want to be planning on hope, that the tariffs will somehow resolve better before we have to place the order. That is the slimmest of slim hopes, so I don't even want to put that out there, but we will ask them to delay that order as long as we can to allow, for diplomacy to happen if it can happen. So no, this does not yet include that. Yeah, just sobering, potentially sobering.
Tom?
Okay, so my question is, why Canadian steel and not US steel?
Cost. Initially, it's the cost. Canadian steel was, for a long, long time, much less expensive than US steel, and proximity. Where we would source the material is just closer for us. Likely that will be a huge factor, the transportation, depending on where US steel, if that does look to be the better bet, can come from. But it still may be that the transportation costs alone still tip to Canadian steel even with the tariffs.
But you'll look at both.
Thank you.
You'll look at all
Absolutely.
sources.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Absolutely.
Other questions for Sarah up to this point in her presentation?
Okay. So that is the main reason why I'm recommending moving to $40. And when I asked John to do the analysis, my intuition was that it would be around $40 to $45. I was surprised that it was just a little bit below 40, but it would be spot on. And again, it brings us to where we should be for the economic reality. The additional fees, the additional $10 would generate about $1.5 million in year one, if we are still at the anticipated 128,000 tons that would be subject to the solid waste management fee. Everything over what has been budgeted as needed for access to support by the solid waste management fee, so that those bullets, everything over that need, and we would continue to whittle down our usage and needs of that, exposure to that, would be directed to this project. So that means I am recommending that we not do any capital projects for the next 3 fiscal years, but for this MRF and emergency has to be replaced this year needs. So dollars that have been previously committed but not spent are counted in that 9 million. And we will, as all good New Englanders do, we will make do with what we have. And we're in good shape. We're in very good shape. We're not planning to have extensive capital expenditures, but for the Milton Drop-Off Center for the next 3 years. So we, to this point, had gotten ourselves infrastructure-wise to where we were already ready to start dwindling down on the capital expenses. We will not be redoing Milton. That was about, at last estimate, $800,000, so we know we can't do that. That will be pushed out a minimum of 5 years. We will look at our planned replacement schedule, scrutinize that, and we will be making do. So we will be showing the board kind of what the deferred impact is, so that we can project out the need post the MRF, post commissioning the MRF, what the need will be in, so say this takes us 2.5 fiscal years, what is the impact in year 2.5 to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so that we know what we will need at that point. I am also putting into the recommendation for obviously discussion that when we commission the MRF, the new one, decommission the old one, that we sell that property. That property has value as real estate, as an asset. Sell that property, use those proceeds back into the capital fund to continue to bolster that. We do still have Flint Avenue, a small portion there. That won't add significantly to it, but the goal, again, would be to sell that property and put that into capital reserve. Mike had mentioned, and we had also talked internally, why not just raise the MRF tip fee to cover this shortfall? Why not raise DOCs? The tons at the MRF right now, we're processing about 44,000 tons. We're already at $90 a ton, proposing 95 in this budget. It's either 90 or 95 for the tip fee for this next budget. In order to generate the same amount of revenue that we would from the solid waste management fee, we would have to add at least another $25 to $30 per ton at the MRF. That puts us significantly out of the market range for MRF tip fee. The Rutland MRF is around $100 a ton. So we are already bumping up against that market rate. I think we're at 95 for, definitely 95 for the ACR, the average commodity revenue, and the 90-95 for the tip fee. So we're right there. So we would immediately push ourselves over, and we would then start to lose tons to go to Rutland, because the transportation costs would make more sense to go to Rutland. So adjusting that fee to make up this shortfall is not practical and would not yield the result. The drop-off centers are utilized by, as Paul said, 27% of our population. And as I referenced at the beginning of the presentation, the state says that the generators of the waste shall pay the cost for managing the waste. Solely putting this on the DOCs would mean that only 25% of our generators would be supporting all of Chittenden County. And that is not fair, it's not equitable. The most equitable way to address this shortfall is to spread the cost amongst all of the solid waste generators to invest in the infrastructure that benefits all of the members of Chittenden County.
Well said.
Oh, thank you.
That's an observation, well said in my opinion, my opinion, but you're to take a drink of water, you've been talking a lot, please.
Thank you. So
throw
it
it out there.
sounds like I was gonna ask you if you'd considered, instead of a big jump of 10, say maybe 4 years at 250. But it sounds like the need is so great that we need it sooner than, say, in 4 years.
Correct. The need is immediate. And without immediately going to the voters for another bond, without taking out a loan, which even if we were to take out a loan, we would still have to give voter permission because it would be a long-term indebtedness. It's the same thing. We do, unfortunately, we are in this position of needing to make this large jump now.
Other questions and comments from commissioners? I think Rick's got, I can read your look. Go ahead.
You're getting used to me. You largely answered a question I was going to ask, which are alternatives, because I don't love the idea of jumping from 30 to 40.
Right.
But I think what you're saying is there is no practical alternative shy of going back out to the voters, which obviously is undesirable.
Correct. And that just, again, places additional burden on the new MRF to cover that additional debt service.
Right.
So that means that at that point, we would certainly need to go over what we think we would need to charge as a tip fee solely for that reason, to cover debt service. And at that point, we may need to do an assessment to our member towns if we can't pay the debt service. So we want to avoid that as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, I'll just comment too that, the old MRF is being hung together with, baler twine and.
Yeah, duct tape,
and
gum,
duct tape
everything.
And gum, and so, I worry that we're gonna end up having to ship all the waste to Rutland. And
Yes.
boy, talk about cost for that. So
Yes.
I do think I think we have to get a new MRF going.
Yes.
So, is what I think.
Thank you for bringing that up, and that keeps Josh up at night.
Yeah,
If I can
sure.
speak for Josh. It keeps me up on the occasional night. John, you're gonna be kept up as well, the longer you're here. But it is a reality. It's an old facility, and it owes us nothing.
No.
It has done an excellent job, and Casella does an excellent job at moving material through and working, with what they have. They really, really do an excellent job. So I don't know if Mike is still on, but I do want to thank Casella for that. And they work very closely with Josh, you know, he speaks with them weekly. But it's getting to the end of what it can do. And it can't do more. And we need it to do more. So the only way it can do more is with a new facility that is modern and can expand for the future and has that flexibility for the future.
Barb?
So Michael was accurately noting this is going to hit businesses hard. So the marketing group, all one of you, is going to have to work really hard to convince businesses that this is in their best interest. And I hope we can develop some kind of hook, like, well, you can recycle more things if we have a better MRF, you know, whatever we need to do. But it's going to hit businesses hard.
Yeah, and we don't have, and I would never presume to know how haulers are going to communicate this to their customers, how they might work with themselves with their customers on mitigating the increase, because haulers do a great job at working with their customers on maximizing the service, right, and getting the most service for the least amount of cost to the customer. And yes, we have, you know, as part of our outreach team, we have someone who is solely dedicated. Her job is business outreach at Barb, as you know, business outreach coordinator. And she is out there every single day. And so we are always happy and want to work even more with industry, with businesses, with institutions, with anyone who wants to work with us on how to, first of all, primarily reduce their waste. And it's ironic to say this because the more that they reduce their waste, the less solid waste management fee comes in. But that is our mission, right? It is to reduce the amount of waste that is generated and disposed. So we want to do that work. And we will be certainly more than happy to discuss with any business about the impact. We will work to be able to make it as transparent as possible, to be able to show businesses their potential impact. But as we were talking about, we can't really know without knowing the details of their contract, of their service specifically, and how callers may spread the overall cost across all of their customer sectors, what it's going to mean specifically for them. So that really is for the haulers to do some of that work. We are happy to support that effort with whatever information, data that they would like us to provide. So point well taken, Barb, yes.
Just one thing you might want to consider a number you might want to develop. If the old MRF fails, here is the cost per ton of how much more it's going to cost to deal with it.
Yeah, true.
Because it won't be trivial to ship that all down, and that's what you'll have to do. So it'd be good to have that in your back pocket as a justification, or maybe put it out front. But I think that would be a good thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think pivoting towards what we are going to get versus what, you know, additional costs on trash, because as Sarah has pointed out, it's not a transparent, it's a very unknown how to even calculate what the impact is going to be on businesses. So what we can say is that we're going to have a brand new MRF for 30 plus years that's going to be able to, you know, accommodate all the recycling in Chittenden County and more, and that, you know, that will help stabilize costs for recycling for sure. And as you say, we won't have to ship it down to Rutland or out of state for processing.
Right. And Chittenden County and the state has benefited from having a municipality own this facility. It provides that bedrock, that stability for having this service, which is mandated by the state. The state mandates us to keep this material out of the landfill. So we are providing that baseline service and to ensure that everyone can comply with that mandate.
We've been, I'm always looking at the clock, it's my nature, and I am cognizant of the hour. This has been a discussion part of the agenda. As Sarah's made plain, we'll be dealing with this, addressing this again at our April meeting. So I hate to shut off conversation, but if you have any other final comments or questions, we will have another crack at this next month, excuse me. Yes, and then related to that is the potential for accommodating me and actually Alan as well. I would like to move the date of the April meeting to 1 week earlier. I will be out of town during the week of our normally scheduled board meeting, and I would like to be present. And I'm sure Alan would love for me to be present here too, because in the absence of the chair, the vice chair runs the meeting. So I'm guessing you'll send out a doodle poll to see if we will have a quorum available. But I just wanted to give folks the alert that the Wednesday prior.
We're looking at the 16th, so it'd be April 16th. So if folks could check their availability, we will send out that poll. But so you've got the heads up for checking your calendars. We would still have an exec board meeting on the 14th.
Correct.
So for exec board members, that would mean 2 meetings in that week. And looking to have a finance committee meeting the week before.
Busy times.
Yes.
I would like to say we're then ready to move on to item number 8 on the agenda, which is other business. Is there any other business to bring before the board tonight? Have a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Seth Burlington.
Second.
Seconded Estes.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
Recording stopped.